Hey guys, welcome back to Corky Gachas, and in this video I'm going to teach you guys how to be a Spear Lord Knight. I'm going to cover the stats, the skills, where to grind, what gear you should craft, as well as the pets and the cost in this video. So first up we have the stats, and here you can see this is my level 67 Knight stats, and the stat allocation is very simple. Your focus is on strength since you are trying to have this class do as much damage as possible, right? If you're going for the Spear Knight route, I will be assuming this is your intentions. It's more for grinding, I would say, but you can still build it for PvP. As you can see here, the preset is named as grind, and the strength allocation is as such. I do not allocate 100% to strength. From time to time I do allocate to a G, as well as giving a bit of a dex. This dex is mainly just for accuracy so that I do not miss the monsters, but if you were to have a core later I'll teach on it, you might not need this dex stat allocated anyways, but it's quite cheap, right? Since your strength equivalently need like 4 of this dex stats to get 1 of the strength stats. So strength first, and you can see right here I have a G. You can also opt for vitality, it's really up to you. Personally I prefer agility because it does reduce the global cooldown for my pierce, meaning I can pierce a bit faster and it can aid me in farming a bit more efficiently. Of course you can opt for vitality if you think that you can't tank as well and you want the pot efficiency to be higher, but agility also gives you some flee. So how I allocate this is I would add strength to around 80, and along the way I would use the random spare like stat points that I have to allocate into a G, and this is where I will land onto this stat itself. I don't think there's a hard and fast rule on how many strength you should add per a G. The min-maxi part is not really that important in my opinion, but your focus should be strength, either a G or vitality, and then lastly adding some into dex if you were so require for the accuracy part. So moving on to the skills, you can see right here this is my skill build for the first job. I'm going to walk you guys through the first job, second job, as well as the second job advancement, which is like Lord Knight tier, right? So right here for the first job itself, this is what I added. Of course nothing in Sword Mastery. We are going with increased recovery for reasons because we have skill points and the rest of the stuff are not really that attractive for a Spear Knight. And the bash itself is low level because we are not going with the a G Knight stuff, right? We are not going to use bash. Magnum Break is good because in some scenarios you do need Magnum Break, especially in PvP, and also it does increase the fire attack. So if you so wish to use a fire converter and then you want to include Magnum Break in your rotation, also go ahead with it, but I personally don't see a need. So this is really just because we don't have elsewhere to put the stat points. 5 provoke because we need to get endure. Endure is really the best skill here that you can have because it prevents you from being staggered, so this is very important. Do note that it only lasts 7 attacks, so you do have to recast it every 37 seconds or every 7 attack if you want to use this, especially in PvP scenarios, right? But moving on to the second job, we do have here the riding skill as well as the spear mastery. You can see this side of the skill itself is empty because this is for the tank spec and this is for the sword spec, so you are only left with the spear spec over here. And I would first start with the spear mastery into the pierce. The reason is very simple, because for you to go to brandish spear, right, you kind of need 16 skill points, and brandish spear doesn't really shine that well that early on. I do think that farming would be a lot easier with pierce first, but of course you can also choose to go for this route if you so wish to. And then we are going to first get the pierce to max level, and then subsequently we are going to add the riding as well as the cavalier mastery, and then going into brandish spear. So this is the basic one. You can see I'm only 1 skill point left, and the last skill point is basically just going to be either in spear boomerang or the spear step. Doesn't really matter too much. Spear boomerang is more for creating or getting aggro, so you can see it does provoke the enemy, and I also use it for some AFK farming where I need to tag monsters right at a range so that I don't really die. This for AFK monster research. And also the charge attack is very useful. You definitely want to have charge attack because it kind of closes the gap so that you are able to pierce them or like do any stuff to them, right? Especially in PvP scenario. I don't think this is that relevant in a PvE scenario, but can also come in handy when you are trying to first tag the MVP, right? That's when you need the charge attack, so this is very important. Going into a Lord Knight, you can see that the skill tree hasn't been unlocked, but it's quite self-explanatory from this. Although it does list here that the G Knight wants the Aura Blade. Honestly, when you click on this, right, it says that grants additional damage to your attack. I also know that from previous servers, the Taiwan and NA server, right, Aura Blade actually increases damage also to your spear, so this is something that you want to get. But once you turn Lord Knight, the first criteria you really want is to get the Clashing Spear, or what we call Spiral Spears, right? So this one is 6 attack, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You can see over here. So very strong skill. This is your main farming skill moving forward when you go to a Lord Knight, and I would say get this up first. You don't really have to max it. You can either get 3 levels or 5 levels before moving on to other skills, namely the Aura Blade as well as Concentration. This would boost your attack itself, your damage itself, and then subsequently you can move back to Clashing Spear and get these maxed out. So don't rush to max this first, and find mobs that you can farm efficiently, either like 3-hit KO or like have a 2-hit KO so with your respective spear levels, and then add these skills to boost your damage. So this is just for these skills aspect. So of course we know that to get to a Lord Knight you need to get levels. So how do you get levels? You kind of grind, right? So moving on to the leveling part, this is where the first grinding actually occurs. It's when you hit level 40 and you craft your equipment, you craft your spear, and now you are officially a Spear Knight. And this is when you add the pierce, like I've mentioned, the skill build itself, and then you were to come to Milka to farm. However, I have a different recommendation personally. Once I've become adept enough in this game itself, I do feel like the advice to farm at Milka might not be the best if you are focused on the long-term gains. So the reason why people actually recommend you to come to farm at Milka is very simple. It's because it drops this light granule, and also it's a large unit, so it's easier for you to farm. But my take on this is that honestly, it doesn't really matter where you farm from 40 to 50. It's going to go through like a breeze, especially if you do teaching. So what I recommend is instead at the Tara Frog and the Hydra. So you can see the locations, right? For Hydra itself, it aligns with the Shipwreck Labyrinth. So you can find that and you farm Pirate Scales as well as Hydra. The reason is very simple, right? The cards for these two are so freaking valuable that you kind of don't want to miss out any combat time of not farming it. And I think that level 40 to 50 might be the best time to farm, albeit you might level a bit slower, but I do say that this might benefit you. If you really get a lucky Hydra card, it's going to benefit you multiple folds rather than you gaining 1 extra level, which you can easily compensate with teaching, right? But the light granule, you do need to like snipe it from the market if you don't farm here, right? You have to go to the market and then try your best to snipe it. Alternatively, you can have friends, you can have your guildmates try to give the extra ones for you, especially if they are farming at Milka. They will be able to give it to you, right? So that is what my recommendations are for 40 to 50. So moving on to level 50 to 60, I'm going to show you right at the place itself how I farm, because I do think that Minoros is going to be your main farming spot for a very long time. In fact, for me, level 67, I'm still farming at Minoros, and the reason why is because very simply the card that it drops is freaking insane. So you're just going into the monster archive, you're going to take a look at the card for Minoros. It deals 18% damage to large enemies over right here, and this card I've seen it close for upwards of 1 million Zenny. This is insane, and the reason why people want this card is because of the large size monsters being mostly MVPs in the later game of the stage of the game, right? So you definitely want the Minoros card, and for a lot of people, they will recommend for Knights to farm here from level 50 to level 60. Personally, I would recommend Knights to farm beyond level 60, because from the EXP front, really teaching can cover a lot of the like holes if you were to get to farm actually slower, right, after the material and EXP drops. So I do feel like this can be a spot from level 50 to 70. And as for level 50 itself, right, at the start you wouldn't be farming like this, like me. At the start you will probably be farming with your peers, and what I recommend is that for you to party, to find other people that are farming Minoros, and then you will party them and then farm in a party. But do not be mistaken, right? Party is not always the way to go. In fact, I do believe that farming solo is the way to go for a knight, especially unless you can find knights that really farm at the same pace as you. So once you have your damage high enough, right, you also want to use like a water converter so that you can hit even harder. And also some cards that would potentially help you is the brute card, right? So you can see I have 2 goblin cards over here. Effectively or most efficiently, I should be using this combo because it kind of multiplies, right? Fire plus the goblin card itself, right? Ratio plus the element is going to be the best, but really doesn't matter. The difference is not that huge. So going back into my goblin card is also fine. So you can have 2 Vedon cards, you can have 2 goblin cards. It's really up to you. And then use a water converter. Right now I'm not using water converters because my damage is strong enough. So you try to experiment, right? When is it better to use Pierce versus using Brandish Spear? Initially I was using Pierce all the way until I realized that I could 2-hit KO with Brandish Spear with a water converter. So that's when I switched to a Brandish Spear build. So the route is very simple: party first, and then after that, when you're strong enough, you can probably 2-hit KO with Pierce or even 1-hit KO with Pierce. move on to soloing, and then subsequently you move on to 2-hit KO with Brandish Spear, which is going to be the fastest way for you to farm. So alternatively, if you think that you're not going to get lucky, you just want to maximize your EXP gain, then feel free to move to Savage. Once you are level 66, I think that's when you lose the level gain on the Mineras, and then you can come here to farm at level 66, and then you can farm to level 70. That is really what I would not recommend. I will continue farming the Mineras, but it's really up to you, right, if you want to maximize the EXP gain. Another option you can explore for farming is also the air group, and the reason why I would say that it's not as optimal to come here early is because they really hit freaking hard. But the good thing about them is that two good things, right, that they drop. The first thing is, if you were to go into the air group section, you can see that they were to drop the loot over here, which is the air group card. Air group card is an auction card, so you really want to get it, and you kind of can sell it for quite a lot of money. So this is from a Zenny perspective, right? Or you want to use it for yourself, it's also quite good. But an alternative thing that you're farming for is the horns, which can be used for crafting your level 70 spear, the piercing spear. And also I do think that for some of the equipment itself, it's also needed for the Eden group, so you can see over here. But of course, this wouldn't be as advisable if you are just coming here to farm for EXP early, right? I would think that you want to come here after you're able to sustain yourself adequately well, and then that's when you come here after the Mineras grind. Now for level 70 onwards, honestly, if you're watching this as a pure beginner, right, it will be quite some time before you reach level 70, but I'm still going to cover it because I have plans on where to grind already. So my first plan is to grind at Swordfish at level 70. The reason very simple: large fish and water. I can cover all these elements. Draenei card as well as Flora card are both decently cheap, I would say, in the marketplace, so definitely just buy them up and then farm at Swordfish. That is where you want to farm at, especially since they drop auction card, which is the Swordfish card. So I do think good place to farm at level 70. Alternatively, like I've mentioned, right, anything that is either large or small can both be beneficial, because now your Spiral Pierce would do extra damage to small units. But I wouldn't really say that there are a lot of grinding spots for a lot Knight per se. In the NA server, they do recommend going to grind at Nightmare, but do note that those advice is kind of outdated, because Nightmare does have a lot less HP in those servers, which is why I think that if you want to grind at Nightmare, it's still fine. Just the fact that Demon card, right, which is the Shroud card, is quite expensive, so you do have to really dig deep to get a Shroud card if you really want to grind at the Nightmare. I would alternatively grind at Shroud itself, because at level 75 onwards, right, once you've transitioned from the Swordfish, I think it would be fine to grind at Shroud. Same thing, because you use the same cards as the Swordfish, and also the card that it drops is quite useful against demons, right? So this is my recommendations. You can also go with the Nightmare if you really do have a Shroud card which deals extra damage to the demon units. Now that we're done with the grinding, let's move on to the gear. I do think that it's quite important to focus also on the gear. But the first things we are going to touch on is for level 40. Personally, I did not craft the level 40 equipment, the rest of the equipment. I did craft the weapon, but I do think now looking back, it wasn't a big deal to craft this. It is quite minuscule amount of money for you to craft this, right? The Zenny wise as well as the material wise, it's very cheap. So just do craft this so that from level 40 to 50, it can really help you, especially if you want to hunt the Tara Frog as well as Hydra parting, right? It's very important. So definitely craft a level 40 gear, but I'm not going to specify what you should craft because it really doesn't matter too much. Let's move on to level 50, where some things do become more important. So level 50, this is where your first decision comes: which spear do you need? A lot of people say just go for the piercing spear, right? This is the spear that you want to focus on if you want to use pierce. My recommendations is also that you go for piercing spear if you want to focus on the pierce aspect. But since for a lot of free-to-play players, you are not going to be having multiple sets of gear, right? So this is going to share between your tank build and your PvP build as well as your piercing build, right? So I do recommend going for the magic spear instead, because this would benefit a lot more if you were to be using sturdy strike for your tank build. So this is what I really went with. But if you really 100% want to focus on just piercing, then go with piercing spear. There's no right or wrong here. For the other gear itself, I would 100% recommend combat uniform. I do think that this is the most efficient one. Combat uniform plus the wool scarf as well as the tidal shoes. And the reason is very simple: combat uniform gives you strength, and this is when it comes to the effective one-hit KO ranges, right? You do need the extra strength. And for the wool scarf, it does give you strength as well, and also the combo gives you you physical damage plus 3%. So this should be able to cover, even if you were to use a magic spear, it should be enough. But if you were to use a piercing spear, it will be even extra damage for your piercers. So this is just something to take note of. This is what you want to craft. You can also go with the Eden group uniform, although I wouldn't really recommend it that much, because from an earlier stage, when you are in the level 50 range, right, I do feel like the damage is a bit more relevant for grinding, so definitely go for that. Once you are at level 60, 60 there are no upgrades, right? Level 70 is the next break point, so this is where we are heading and where my account is heading as well. For myself, I'm considering going the piercing spear itself, so going back into the piercing spear. So over here, so this is a level 70 piercing spear. One thing to take note of, I know a lot of people are going to ask me this if I don't cover it, is Kado. Kado is the best spear for Spiral Pierce, or the Clashing Spear, right? Whatever they call it in the new one. But right now you can't forge it. I have checked and I noted that the Discord channels actually, the mods actually say that the developers are going to bring back Kado Spear, but I'm really not confident that it will come back in the next few days. So without that, going with the piercing spear would be the right choice here. If you are focused on PvP and you still want to use one set, like I mentioned, then you can go with magic spear for the ignore defense. That is what I would recommend. As for the one-handed spears, honestly, I don't recommend any of the one-handed spears. I don't think it's worth your time. So just skip the one-handed spears. It's not going to be worth it. So going into the gear itself, right, this is where like a lot of flexibility would come in. If you are more focused now on your tank build, I would say that just go with the Eden uniform. It can also help you farm from a grinding aspect, because you'll be able to sustain a bit better, right? So if you want, you can go for the Eden uniform as well as the Eden like group one. So the side effect is for neutral damage reduction by 10%. This is good for PvP as well as for your general grinding and MVP, right? Also for the boots wise, you can go with the soft leather boots, or if you really focus on tank, like I mentioned, go with the Vital Tree shoes build, because it does have healing received plus 5%. So this is what I would recommend. If you are truly only going for a like normal PS build, you are not going to have a alternate preset, right, like I mentioned for the tank build itself, then go for the same thing, right? Go for the combat uniform with the wool scarf as well as the tidal shoes. I think this would be the best itself. The rest are not really that recommended. The Morrigan set, it's more to add a G, right? It's not really for the spear build. So this is what I recommend from a gear perspective. Now going into the cores, this is what I would recommend. I don't think I have the most optimal cores for a for this piercing build itself, but I do have some of the more useful ones for it. So the accurate stat, right, over here you can see it's in the Dimmic core. Level 4 is not the best, but this is what you want for a piercing build. You are going to do 5% more damage and also gain 45 accuracy. This is why I mentioned you don't really need dex if you don't want to add it. But honestly, the dex is very little, right? So if you want to just continue adding dex, it's still fine. So this is the one that will cover the accuracy as well, giving you more damage. For the secondary cores itself, try to find something that gives you attack. There is also something that you can explore, which is over right here, the core overload. It gives you a chance to have a higher hit, the damage itself, right? So you will have more chance for higher cap, but also potentially you will do less damage. So I don't really use this because I kind of like consistency in 1-hit KO, 2-hit kills. So I try to go with the more consistent route in case it would to disrupt my farming patterns, right? So this is more with farming intact in mind. If you're to MVP with this build, I would suggest going with the core overload. That should be what you go with. And then last slot, you can see I do have potion boost here because like I mentioned, I use this mini for my grinding. So potion boost is what I go with. If you want to use it for other purposes, you can also go with the mana length reversal, which deals more damage as you are closer to the target. So this is also something that you can consider. Other than that, there's nothing too much to consider. So these are the main ones that you want to go for. As for a Lord Knight itself, I do not have the cost, of course, because I'm not a Lord Knight yet, but it's quite straightforward. You want the Spiral core or the Spiral Pierce core, and what it does is it increases the weight of the spear, which makes your Spiral Pierce do more damage. It's also the reason why Kado is so OP, and with Kado's removal, I do think that the spear, the core spear itself, right, the core for the Spiral Pierce is going to be more important, because without that, Spiral Pierce is really going to feel super lackluster, so you definitely want that. So this is about it to cover for all the cores itself. Lastly, we're going to touch on the pets. I'm going to recommend a few pets that I think are the best when it comes to grinding and also for generic purpose use. And the first one, of course, is going to be the Squid Gate or Squid Gate, right? So this Squid itself is super OP for a lot of classes, and also for the Knight itself, I don't think there's any question it's good. The reason why is because it performs this buff itself, which gives 15% damage for 10 seconds. It's quite sick. But for grinding, I wouldn't say that it's the best, because like I mentioned, consistency might be the best thing when you go for grinding, which is why I don't really recommend this for grinding. But for general purposes, for other MVPs, for stuff like that, if you were to go with a Pierce build, just go with the Squid Gate. It's going to be very good for you. Alternatively, if you were to see yourself, right, getting a bit of aggro, or you want to complete other general content such as HHH and also the non-Helheim ones, maybe you go for Endless Tower and you're not the tank, right? You can still go for this Child of Earth itself. It can be bought in the shop over here. So if you were to go to the points shop, you can see there is a pet shop over here. Yeah, so this is Child of Earth. I've already bought 4 copies of it, so this is what I'm focusing on. That is also considering the fact that you don't have any S tier pets itself, right? But if you do, then it might not really be needed. I would rather you go for the general shards, but this is good for tanking because it does suck a lot of damage from you. And for MVP, maybe not the best, because it will die super fast in one hit, and then subsequently you wouldn't be able to use it, right? But for generic content, the healer should be able to heal your pet up again, so very good. Next one, the super underrated one I'm going to mention is going to be the Volcanic Bulldog. This ties hand in hand with you farming a lot of times at Mineros, right? So the reason why this pet is so good is because the shield is freaking insane. It gives you 50% effect, status effect resistance, which means that the Mineros Hammerfall is going to affect you less, which also means you're going to farm faster. So all this ties hand in hand. I always farm using the Bulldog itself when I were to go for Mineros farming until now, and this is also quite good for MVP because compared to this Child of Earth, right, which is going to likely take a few hits and then die, the Volcanic Bulldog is not really the one-time kind of usage, right? The Volcanic Bulldog will always be active and then will constantly give you the shield, and at tier 5, which I'm reaching soon, it's going to give you 30% mage HP as a shield, which is crazy. Like the cooldown is 15 seconds only and it lasts for 8 seconds, so almost or more than 50% uptime. What can you ask for more, right? So also some of the pets that I don't have, I'm going to recommend to you guys is the Sohi as well as the Sohi over here, right, which grants you the attack speed, movement speed, as well as a lifesteal and a 3-second skill cooldown, right? Not the best for when farming, but I do think for other aspects it's quite good. And also the Cannonmon here, which gives you the healing effect, so very good for general content. So these are the pets that I would recommend for a Knight. As for the S tier pets, granted, there are not a lot of options, right? If you were to look at this, we only have 4 of them. I do feel like the Samurai is going to be super good early game, and also going into the late game, it's going to be very good, right? Especially because if you are to level it up, right, then you're going to do huge amount of damage, and the Knight is traditionally more tank class, right? So I would feel like the Ghost Samurai is going to be good for the Knight. And also the Earth Lord, need I say more? Earth Lord is freaking OP. Earth Lord can like basically just map hack, right? So it's just going to taunt every single unit to you, and this is going to greatly assist you, especially when you were to use the AoE spells itself. I wouldn't really recommend Danielle. I think that Danielle is extremely early game, so yeah, I feel like this doesn't really apply in the late game. I think Danielle is going to fall off hard, so I don't really go for Danielle. And Tasha kind of needs a lot of investment, so this is also something that I wouldn't recommend unless you are ultra whale. So basically I'll just recommend this too, and most of the time you're going to be using your A pets anyway, right? Yeah, if you're non-whale, so that is just the direction for the pets for a Spear Knight. And that about does it for this video and touch on a Spear Knight. So this is mainly more for grinding in my opinion. If you really want to PvP, I wouldn't exactly suggest it. However, once Slot Knight comes out with Spiral Pierce, I do feel like maybe it's going to have a bit more place in PvP, but without Kado, I still think that this build is a bit lackluster. So the next video, I'm also going to cover a Vid Tank Knight, which is the one that I would recommend slightly more compared to a Spear Knight for PvP as well as for MVP scenario. So stay tuned for that, and if you guys like this video, definitely drop me a like and subscribe for more RO content. This is Corki Gachas, signing off.